Part because we didn't meet in January, and we've actually moved this up because of the economic development trip that's planned for later this month with the executive. So I'm not going to say more in the way of greetings. I'll turn it over to the mayor, and the first agenda item, which is at your request, is to talk about your initiatives with the homeless. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the council, and I appreciate all the members being how should I say, recognizing that we have a lot of stuff to get through this morning, and we want to be able to make those presentations and answer any questions that you may have. And I also wanted to introduce new members of the government and ask you to please, if you haven't had a chance to meet them and discuss your priorities with them, that you do exactly that. First, our Chief Technology Officer, Achana Vimalapalli, joined us a couple of weeks ago at Octo, and she brings a wealth of experience in the technology space, and we're very excited to have her on board. So welcome, Achana. Also, Laura Newland, I've appointed to be the Director of the Office on Aging. Laura has been with the Office on Aging and is doing an excellent job and is well regarded not only by our seniors but also by our partners who help us provide aging services across the district. So let's congratulate Laura on her appointment. Also, Michelle Garcia, I've appointed as the Administrator of the Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants. And Michelle joins us from the federal space with a wealth of experience in this area. And Karima Holmes, who I have appointed as the Director of the Office of Unified Communications. And Karima joins us from Dallas, Texas, where she was the leader for several cities in providing 911 services. So please join me in welcoming these new members of my team. I also want to thank all the members for the council in stepping up with what we regard as a citywide priority, a priority of this government and the people of Washington, D.C., and that's ending homelessness. And we want to present to you our plan to end family homelessness in Washington, D.C. I'm grateful to all of you this past fall for passing legislation that would help us get to closing D.C. General. I explained then that we needed several changes. We could not proceed with the status quo if we expected to change results for families. So we want to specifically talk about the plan to close D.C. General. And I think the consensus is wide across the District of Columbia that D.C. General is too big, is deteriorating, and is no place to support families. And that's exactly what people tell me all across Washington, D.C. So we have worked very hard to get to a solid plan, and we will submit that to you today. As the administration has discussed with each of you, our plan is to present a piece of legislation to the council for your consideration. And we have also discussed with you the all 8 ward strategy we have for closing D.C. General. We will also be presenting this information in the community this Thursday and plan to have follow-up discussions with the community about the design of this facility. So with that, I want to turn to Laura Zeilinger, who is the Director of our Department of Human Services, who will discuss the plan in more detail.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Very excited to be having this conversation with you today. I think we've all had a lot of energy. It's as the Mayor said, a goal that we all share is to do better by our residents when they're experiencing homelessness, to have a place where they can come in that is appropriate, reflects the care, the dignity that we place on residents, and quickly supports them to move back into housing in the community. First, I want to start by just reminding us of when we talk about family homelessness, we talk about homelessness in the district, we know that on any given night, more than 7,000 individuals, including people in families with children, experience homelessness. And many more people in our community are just a paycheck away from being out on the street. And so we need to have a safety net system that supports families when they're falling on hard times. It's a problem, unfortunately, that's been on the rise. Family homelessness has increased by 40% in our community since 2010. What do we know about family homelessness? We know that most of families who experience homelessness are headed by a single parent, and that the majority have been living with family or friends before they come to the homeless system, whether it's after they had a lease and then outstayed their welcome with many other people till they could not stay anymore, or whether they've been put out by somebody that they were living with. And 1 in 5 of the families who are experiencing homelessness have been victims of domestic violence or survivors of a domestic violence situation. And we know that we've, for many years, tried a lot of the same strategies, and they just have not worked. And we need to do something different if we are going to turn these numbers around in the right direction. And we have a lot of knowledge about what that looks like and what we need to do. And so now it's a matter of actually doing the work to getting it done that's going to make us successful. We know homelessness is a solvable problem. And while we know that what it means to solve homelessness, and I think we all agree and understand the goals of our strategic plan, it means that homelessness is rare because we've prevented it more whenever possible. It's brief because when people experience homelessness, they have a safe place that they can come where they're supported very quickly back out into permanent housing in the community. And it's non-recurring because they're there with the supports they need, hopefully to not be returning back to homelessness. But we know that as long as there's job loss, family rejection, a whole host of other things that happen, as long as we have poverty and a lack of affordable housing, people will need a safe, dignified place that they can come in, and that it needs to, and that we need to make those fixes to every single part of our system. Every neighborhood, every resident has a stake in this. When people are safe and in housing, we all benefit. We all know we are not the kind of community who wants to see people who have no other choice but to be living on our streets. So we have very clear strategies, as I mentioned, about homelessness prevention. We've already launched some our homelessness prevention grants this year and have prevented more than 700 families who have come in seeking homeless services from entering shelter. But we need to be able to make that shift to offer, again, dignified shelter in a housing and housing in a housing-first way. So we need to shift our shelter system and our approaches to the way people access housing, where we're not trying to say that they need to fix themselves or we need to fix them before they can get into a home, but understand that being in a home and that stability is what people need to be able to achieve their potential. And we need to have a system that does that accepts people where they are at, helps them get into housing with those wraparound services to support them in there. We are different than many other communities, save a few in this country, in that we have right to shelter here. In 1984, we approved right to shelter, and what that means is that when it's freezing or below, that whenever anybody presents to us qualifying for a shelter stay, we need to be able to provide that. And we also know that in the Dignity Act, we said that for families, that needs to be in certain conditions, that needs to be with their own private room, and so that we end up growing our system during the winter time to meet the need, the full need. And so we have a much clearer depiction of what that need is. This is the right thing to do. We know that homelessness is not caused by the weather, and we have shifted our policies, and with the help of the council, have more tools around eligibility. But because we know that homelessness isn't caused by the cold weather, people are more at risk when the weather is cold. So if we're going to be able to offer shelter to those who need it when they need it, we need a system that works, where families get their needs met and are able to move through quickly, and we're able to help more people without a shelter stay. Because we've had this right to shelter and we have not repaired the other parts of our system, or until now adequately invested in affordable housing that families need in order to meet that right to shelter, we've ended up with DC General. We all know that it was opened initially for a temporary purpose to meet that hypothermia need, but we had so many families with such great need, we have only expanded it over the last 7 years to be the district's largest family shelter. 260 families stayed there last night. That includes about 1,000 people and 400 children. This building is nearing the end of its useful life. It's been deteriorating for years. It's costly, it's inefficient, and it is the biggest single cost driver in our homeless system. We spend about $55,000 per unit at DC General per year to operate. So we know that we've heard loud and clear from the community, from all of you, that we need to do better. We need to close DC General. This is not what our homeless system should be looking like, and so that's what we've pledged to do. The mayor has worked with you, has worked with team with the Interagency Council, with stakeholders in the community, and we have put forward a viable plan to actually achieve the goal that we all share around having an alternative, because we know from our experience back with DC Village that we always need a place where families can come. We knew that DC Village we talked about it in many of the same ways that we're talking about DC General, but when we didn't have an adequate shelter replacement strategy, we ended up with DC General. So now what we want to do is short-term family housing that will be a very different system. So here's the plan. We need safe and dignified places for families to go, and we are going to create short-term family housing across the entire city in all 8 wards. The new short-term family housing will be safe and dignified, small, no more than 50 units in any one facility. They are in residential neighborhoods with accesses to services and transportation and enriched with services. I'm going to pause for a minute because people often have a lot of questions and say, what are the services? The buildings matter, and I am excited to share with you what those buildings look like because they are beautiful, but the services also matter. So there will be social work staff on site. We will have coordinated case plans that work with our TANF system to help families move toward employment, in education and jobs on career pathways, whether it's beginning those linkages in the shelter and then continuing them when families are in housing. In all of the short-term family housing programs will have housing navigators, housing counselors on site that help families access housing that they will be able to afford in the long run in the community. We will help them with budgeting and financial planning. There will be case management. There will be 24-hour staffing that also includes 24-hour security. We will foster strong community partnerships as we have at DC General and all of our other family facilities throughout the city, where we have groups coming in to do tutoring and classes. We will partner with OSSI to do early child development screenings and connect people with appropriate services so that their children are getting their developmental and medical needs met. We work strongly with the Hoya Clinic. They're a strong partner with us at DC General. They will have a home in our new system, and families throughout the short-term family housing will have access to that. We will continue to incorporate the Playtime Project and other activities for children. And we will do this across all 8 wards because we know that, as we've said, it affects our entire community. All 8 wards have a role to play. Families who experience homelessness do not come from one ward or one block in the city. They come from throughout. We need services throughout. We will only accomplish this together. So let me tell you a little bit about the delivery schedule and the timeline for the facilities, and we'll go through each of them one by one, so I won't spend a lot of time on this list. But as you can see, not all of the sites are on the same schedule. That's because some are brand new developments that are being built from the ground up. Others are total gut rehab. In Ward 2, we have a women's shelter, and we are excited to have the ribbon cutting, I think, later this week, and hope many of you will join us for that. And once the final site is in place in the fall of 2018, then we will be able to move forward to hopefully demolish and close the DC General. So we are investing in the solutions that work. Many people want to know how much is all of this going to cost. It costs us about $17 million annually to operate at DC General. The annual cost For the short-term family housing replacement sites is $22 million per year. That's property costs and programs. This is important investment in fixing a broken system. The cost of the Ward 1 site are still being finalized, and we'll talk about that one in a moment. Because those are apartment-style shelters per our commitment and per our legislation, the Ward 1 site, and we can actually move into that one, is a replacement for one of our apartment-style shelters, so it will be an apartment-style shelter. So this is now on the first of the 8 sites in Ward 1. This is in the U Street corridor at 10th and V. This short-term housing facility will have the capacity for about 29 families. We are committed to, as you can see in this picture, while these are renderings, approximate renderings, we want beautiful facilities that fit well on the block, that blend with the rest of the neighborhood. People will not walk by the short-term family housing and say, oh, there is the homeless program. It will not be recognizable as such. It will just be beautiful architecture to folks walking past. This includes a church that is a blighted historical structure, the former Morning Bright Church, along with new construction. We'll continue to work through the designs under design, bid, and build model. So as I said, this is an approximation. And I spoke a little bit already about the services. Every single site will have parking for staff, will have outside play facility for the children, and just for people to be in the outside space where it's not out in front of the building on the sidewalk. The Ward 2 site is a low-barrier emergency housing program for women. This will be the Pat Handy Center. This low-barrier emergency shelter is at 810 Fifth. It will provide shelter for 213 women starting next month. This was the old. It was a gut renovation as well. It has new modern living facilities. We will have on-site Unity Clinic and medical beds for women, something that is missing from our system. It will replace beds that we have right now at 2nd and D in the Federal City Shelter building that are part of John Young and Open Door Shelter. This is the beginning of the changeover on the single side of what our shelter system looks like to improve our level of services, and it's something I think we are all going to feel really proud of, as that's been a system that has been very neglected for a long time. Moving on to Ward 3, this site is at Wisconsin and Edmonds, 2619. This short-term family housing will have 38 units on the site. You can see here the footprint of the new building, and then again an approximation of the rendering. We are looking to build consistent with the height of the surrounding structures, and again there's as with all of the sites, playground space, security on site, all the services that I mentioned on the front end, ample parking for staff. This one is being designed to create a veranda and have natural light flow throughout the building, green roofs, and consistent with our values around green building. In Ward 4, I'm excited to show you 5505 5th Street at 5th and Kennedy. This will have the capacity for 49 families. We know that people are excited to see what has been a long vacant office building put into productive use and a very much needed use. This will have an outdoor half basketball court in addition to the other recreational space, and will be, again, a great use of what has been a vacant building for a long time. Moving on to Ward 5, this short-term housing facility is on 25th Place Northeast, just off of Bladensburg Road, approximately 3 blocks from New York Avenue Northeast. This space will accommodate 50 families. We will have the Hoya Clinic on site. In this location, we will offer, again, the on-site services, and we will be able to accommodate 50 families. Here, moving on to now Ward 6. Ward 6, the site is at Delaware and H Street Southwest at 700 Delaware. Here are the plans for how it fits on the site. This one is actually kind of an interesting and exciting architectural use where we are working with what was used to be a church that's been where we've had an artist presence, and we have a mixed use site. We will have the separate entrances, but that church will maintain an arts use. There will actually be artist residence built in the structure that we're not seeing on the picture on the other side of the church. We will have full story glass, again, lots of natural light to flow through, study spaces and other spaces on the residential floors. Moving on to Ward 7, this one is a district-owned property. It's at 50th and D Street Southeast, just a few blocks from Benning Road. The site will have the capacity for 35 families. It will introduce an indoor-outdoor recreation concept. The dining room will be open to an outdoor play space, allowing for greater multi-purpose use of both indoor and outdoor programming. Again, you can see that we're committed to these being absolutely beautiful buildings that are assets on the block, and this gives you a sense of the general look and feel. Now, finally, we're at the Ward 8 site, which is at 6th Street and Chesapeake Southeast. This short-term housing facility is right across from, or right abuts behind Henley Elementary School. We expect to be able to accommodate room for 50 families. The architecture you can see the building is built into the hill on what is now a district-owned vacant lot. We will continue to, again, work through design, so this gives you a sense of the look and feel. May not be the exact image of what it looks like, but it will, again, have the same services and amenities that we've discussed about or that I was explained to you about the other sites. So that gives you a quick overview of the look, the feel, the attention to design and fitting well within community. We want to make sure that the short-term family housing and in all of our programs are good neighbors, and we'll be working closely with neighbors around to develop good neighbor agreements, which has been a sort of a good practice that other jurisdictions have used to really make sure that everyone feels confident and is on the same page around issues that sometimes residents are concerned about, everything from where people park to how the facility will be maintained, with the hours and the noise around what coming and going looks like, and making sure that we know how to solve problems as they come up, that there's good communication and mutual respect. We will provide examples of these, but they're very much open, so that in each community around each of the programs we can develop agreements around things that residents care about. So here's a quick rundown of what will happen next. Today the mayor will submit Homeward DC Omnibus approval of facilities plan for emergency housing for persons experiencing homelessness, emergency declaration resolution of 2016, and the Homeward DC Omnibus approval of facilities plan for emergency housing for persons experiencing homelessness, Emergency Act of 2016. That was a lot of words. We are looking forward to working closely with the council on the approval of the replacement facilities plan through this legislation. The more quickly and efficiently we do that, the district will be able to move forward with implementing this plan and achieving a higher quality of life for individuals and families who experience homelessness in our community. We can't close DC General without this, and we're very excited and look forward to a discussion today and your partnership in it. On Thursday night, we will host community meetings in the community close to each of the locations that I just shared with you today. And we will be excited to share the full plan, help people understand the programs that we are planning, to help them understand how they can be engaged and participate in making sure that we can make this workable for them. And we then will move on to complete designs and blueprints, permitting and zoning, and development of sites, drafting good neighbor agreements. DHS will do direct solicitations for the services. We will contract for those directly, and we will incorporate things that, as appropriate, from good neighbor agreements to make sure that we have a contract lever to enforce things that are included in those agreements. And then we can all celebrate together that we have a better system and something better to offer our families and close DC General. So I know that was a lot, but I know we've all been excited and known that this was coming. I've enjoyed conversations with many of you over the last several days and year about how we get to this place, and look forward to working with you to achieve it. Thank you.
Yeah, how many units are there in total? How many families do this come?
So we have 271 replacement units for DC General, plus 29 apartment-style units for family shelter. The question was, how many units are there? And then 213 low-barrier beds for women in Ward 2.
David?
First, I just want to say thank you and really appreciate the hard work that you've all put into this. Obviously, there's spent a lot of time not just coming up with the sites, but devising a whole plan, and I think that's really important and sets us, I think, in a positive new direction in the city when it comes to family shelter as well as individual shelter down the road. I'll emphasize what I did in our meeting on Sunday, that for me, the locations are important, but not nearly as important as the services that are in these buildings, and that we have to have what you said, which is 24-hour wraparound services in every single facility. And I think that hinges on the question of the definition of the word access. Really, do you have access? Does that mean that it's access when you need it right there in the building on time, every time to these services? Or is it access because it's being provided at one shelter across the city and we're going to get you in a bus and take you over there? And so this is about, I think, as much almost a communications strategy as well. I believe in you. I believe in the work that you're doing on this, Mayor Bowser and your team. And I think we have to make sure the public knows that this is not the same old that we've had in the past, and that it's important that we all get behind this in as strong a communication effort as possible to understand and really follow through on the fact that there's going to be 24-hour services here, that people are going to get the care they need. They're going to get the mental health, the physical health, the children's activities, and all of the care that they need. I'm convinced that there is a strategy and a plan, and I'm really happy about that. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's rolled out. I think that's extremely important, and so we need to keep on this. And then the only question I have today is, the strategy here around schooling is important to me as a chair of the Committee on Education. These are families with children. Are they going to go to the neighborhood school there, automatic right? Do they have, what's the outreach? And I know it may not be decided already, but what's the strategy there? And just talk a little bit about the students and the lives of the students. It's so traumatic when you are all of a sudden find yourself homeless. Often what we've done in the past is try to make sure those children still have access to the schools they were in before, but that's not often what the parents necessarily want because it's so challenging for them to get there. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great. But overall, I'm really excited about this plan, and I look forward to supporting it throughout the duration of it.
So the McKinney, there's a federal law in McKinney-Vento that governs the education of children when they experience homelessness. Children have a right to remain in their home school, and it is our job, and we partner with OSSI, who has homeless liaisons in every single school, to make sure that we're fulfilling our obligation to our students. We either assist them with transportation assistance, and most parents feel that it is in the best educational interest of their children to have that continuity in their home school. But they may choose, it is their right to choose to either go to the inbound school near where they are staying, or to have transportation back if they are now in a different venue. To put some parameters around what we see now, we have a lot of school age, more than 200 school age children at DC General, less than 12 go inbounds to Payne. Most of them stay at their home school. In terms of the transportation assistance that families get, sometimes when you have very young children, just having the one card where kids ride free, the parents also need to be able to ride, so they're able to help with that additional assistance. But we've been very intentional also about making sure that the programs are close to public transportation, so it's much easier for parents to be able to, and children who don't need parents to take them, to be able to make that trip back to school. And in special cases where families need taxis and so forth, that assistance can be provided.
Thank you.
Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Mayor, Rashad, Laura, the whole team. I really appreciate the work you've done here. When I've thought about this, I was in the room when we closed DC Village, and we told the community around DC General, this is just going to be for one winter. We're going to have an emergency shelter here, but don't worry, by spring we'll shut this down. As a city, we closed DC Village without a plan, and that's why we have the current state of DC General. We've talked for years about how we close DC General, but we've never actually had a plan in place. And I commend you and the whole team, because this is a plan to close DC General, and I think do right by our city and do right by our neighbors to take care of them. So I am very impressed by the thought and the work that has gone into this. I also have said for a while to do not underestimate the capacity of our neighbors to want to take care of their neighbors and to be supportive of this. And last night we met with some of our ANC commissioners and leadership in Southwest, and I was really impressed. They didn't say no. They didn't say we don't want this. They asked smart questions. How do we make this successful? How do we make this work? What's the connection to the schools, as Mr. Grasso talked about, because this is only a couple of blocks away from Amadon Bowen? What's the relationship to our parks? How's this going to work for transit? How's it going to work for the public space? But they were asking questions about how do they make it successful? And I think that the leadership in Southwest, where the site in Ward 6 is headed, shares the same feeling I do, which is I have a responsibility to the constituents that live in the neighborhoods now, but the folks that are going to be in this shelter and they're going to need this assistance, they're my constituents as well. And so I think that's something that really I hope we see in all our neighborhoods, but I've been really impressed and I'm very proud of the leadership I've seen in Southwest to say, how do we make this work? How do we make this successful? So I'm looking forward to this. I think there's a lot of questions, tough questions you're going to hear from the neighborhoods. They're the right questions. How do we make it a success? How do we make this work? How does this relate to the community? There's still some things that need to get worked out, but I think that this is a really good plan. I think that I can tell you for Ward 6 and for Southwest, I'm calling on my neighbors to support this. I'm calling on them to think through how we make it succeed and how we make this a success. But I think this is the right thing to do for our city and the right thing to do for our neighbors who find themselves in this vulnerable space. So I really appreciate the hard work that's gone into this and look forward to working with you to make sure we make it a success.
Thanks, Councilmember.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to congratulate you all on a truly inspired plan. It has been too long that our families have been sheltered in DC General, and I am pleased to have the opportunity to support this effort. We also got our leaders together last night in Ward 1, civic associations, ANCs. We brought out some faith leaders, and now we're working on engaging the business community, and I was very proud of all of our leaders in the ward and the way they are supporting this plan. Gotta love Ward 1 leaders. They were like, yeah, that sounds good, but tell us the terms of the deal. In any case, we are looking forward to welcoming these families into our community, even as we hope that for their sake their stay is brief. We are looking forward to supporting them, engaging with them, and making sure that they have all the resources they need. I do have one question. Do we know yet how intake and placement works now that we are in 8 different places, and is that something you could describe today?
Sure. So when families are applying or needing homeless services, they come to Virginia Williams Family Resource Center on Rhode Island Avenue. That is a That is we have a centralized and coordinated point of entry for homeless services. More and more times when people come into Virginia Williams, we are able to help them resolve their crisis without a shelter stay. And as we move to over the course of the next 2 years, we will do that hopefully even more and more. But when a shelter stay is needed, we will then understand and work with the family, both based on their size and where we have capacity in our system, but also where are their kids in school, where do they have family and support structures, where might they be in working, or where might they be going for job and employment services, if they're participating with us in the TANF program with the vendor and so forth, to be able to make a decision in a placement that works well for each family. Sometimes there's accessibility or family size and things where it's about where we can accommodate, but we will have the ability more than we do now to be able to really help people stay connected to their supports and their daily routines and other things in the community. Thank you.
Councilmember Che.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I, too, want to applaud the mayor for her efforts here and to have brought this to fruition now. I fully support this, and I want to say that the experience that I had with the small group of community leaders last night was similar to what Councilmember Allen talked about. While it was a small group, I think it was a fairly wide representative group, particularly of that local area, Glover Park and Cathedral. And the questions were all good. They're all ones that we'll have to work out the particulars as we go along. But I think people were eager to embrace this. I know I am. And I know that when this actually comes on site, that the community wants to find ways, even in advance, to embrace this temporary facility, because they feel a sense of obligation and they also want to be able to help. So not only are we not opposed to this, I think that Ward 3 will wrap its arms around this, and I think that the plan is very well conceived. I just want to also point out, and we should always remember this, that this is an important, yes, but only one aspect of the whole homelessness project that's underway through the executive, through the mayor, and altogether, it's probably the most hopeful I have ever been about how we're dealing with the situation of temporary homelessness. So I want to thank you. I think it's fantastic, and we can work together as we implement it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilmember Alexander.
And I'm sorry to be repetitive, but thank you, Mayor Bowser, and your team for your commitment to Pathways to the Middle Class. And it's been really enlightening for me as the chair of Health and Human Services to work directly with Deputy Mayor Donald and Director Zeilinger. I wanted to ask, and one, I want to thank you too, because if there was an expectation originally of just having 6, and so there were going to be 2 wards left out. And I can tell you in Ward 7, we were all like, you know, every leader and every resident said, well, I know we're going to get it in Ward 7, probably 2 or 3 shelters in Ward 7. So I commend you for equally distributing the shelters throughout the city. So that's a good thing. I think everyone needs to play their part to end homelessness in the city. I wanted to ask, what were the expectations? And every ward member seems to have gone out to their communities yesterday. Northeast Boundary, I spoke to them about it, and they were very supportive as well. What is your expectation on Thursday as you're going to hold these meetings with the community? Are there going to be any barriers in terms of you actually building these facilities or having these facilities in the area, or is everything full speed ahead? So I'm just interested to know, when you tell the community about it, what are the expectations from the community meetings?
So I think that the tone of some of the conversations we had last night is probably a little bit indicative. People generally think this is the right thing to do and they want to be part of a solution, but there's real concerns about, is this going to change the character of our neighborhood? What are the things that are important to me for this to be able to work? And so I think by and large there are many people who really want to voice important and real and valid concerns, and I'm confident that we can work together to address concerns and move forward to do what I think all residents want us to do, which is have an alternative to DC General. Are there going to be folks who, are not happy? I think we would be not quite, realistic if we thought everybody was going to be jumping up and down. But I think we have laid out a very intentional plan to do what it was that we've been asked to do.
And Mr. Chair, just in closing, I can't stress enough that while these are going to be beautiful, dignified facilities, the case management is going to be the key. Yeah. So we know about the challenges with DC General, and we know what the challenges with the community that we're dealing with the homeless population. So I just implore you to just, I really want to hear more about the intensive case management that's going to come along with these facilities.
Councilmember, just to add on to what Director Zeilinger said, the legislation that we're asking council to consider is to express a sense of the council to support this strategy and process, and to support the other processes that follow, the land use processes that several of the sites will have to go through. So that's the second piece that we'll have to move through in order to be able to accomplish this.
Councilmember May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me echo the sentiment of my colleagues, Mayor Bowser, and to your team, Director Zeilinger, on the kind of intentionality and the thoughtfulness that you put into these sites and locations. I want to highlight, I think, about the Ward 8 site, something that maybe people haven't paid as much attention to, and that is we have about 76 vacant or blighted properties that are in the district's portfolio in Ward 8. And so for the city, not only to look at addressing the issues and needs of our most vulnerable residents, but to also begin to look at how it is that we take some of these vacant properties from the city and begin to develop them and put things in the neighborhood for our communities that are valuable. And so I appreciate, again, the thoughtfulness of being able to go into a neighborhood where there's not been very much new construction or much of an investment from the city, and having a piece of vacant property going in and making what is going to be, I'd like to say, the most outstanding site of all the 8 sites that you'll have right in Ward 8. So, so I really appreciate that. And it's Ward 8, Councilmember Sullivan. It is what it is. It is what it is, right? And then just to kind of, as you go to the Virginia Williams kind of central site, once all these sites are there, we know that there's some challenges at Virginia Williams, and I believe that some of those challenges will require additional assets. And I look forward to working with my colleagues and working with you to make sure that we get the additional resources that we need in Virginia Williams to be able to make sure that process happens in a more seamless and fluid process for our residents. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the mayor and her entire team, particularly Laura Zeilinger and Rashad, for all the work that they put in to this process. I want to say, before I sort of comment on the location in Ward 5, which I have some challenges with based on feedback from the community, I do want to say that the strategy and approach, I think, is the right one, and I've said that from the outset. I think that approaching this from a citywide effort, making sure, having that goal of making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurrent, I think is the right goal. I think making sure that every neighborhood, every resident has a stake is also the right goal. I will say, and I think this won't be new to some of you, that the location that you all have selected in Ward 5 presents a host of challenges for the communities of Langdon Park and Woodridge South. And I would hope that I can work with you and you all can work with the community in my office to try to identify an alternate location based on the challenges that already exist in those neighborhoods. I think you all are aware of the impact of homeless services that are already being provided in that neighborhood, having a men's shelter on Adams Place, having a day center on Adams Place, but also the host of other challenges associated with businesses that have really negatively impacted the quality of life of residents in our neighborhood, including nightclubs, a strip club, a trash transfer station, paint spray booths, Aussie bus parking lot, Wamata bus barn, and a host of other things that are literally within walking distance of the site that you selected and have for years posed a significant impact on the quality of life of residents in that neighborhood. So again, I think the approach and the strategy is the right one, but in terms of the location that you selected in Ward 5, it presents a host of challenges that I believe were already expressed to you all last night. And I do have a question in terms of the strategy and how you all prioritize, or whether or not, what role the impact of existing services play in your decision as to where to locate. And I am mindful and sensitive to the crunch that we have in terms of real estate and trying to identify locations, I imagine, and I know from speaking to you, City Administrator, it's presented you all with some challenges, but this particular community, Ivy City, Park, and Woodridge South, they literally already have homeless shelters, and they have a host of other services that are being provided that present a number of challenges that I think you all are aware of.
And Councilmember, thank you for those comments. And we have talked about what some of the challenges are, and certainly heard that firsthand from the community yesterday. In terms of what we assessed in trying to determine locations, we did first searches wide and far in the wards. We had a solicitation process where we invited people to give us suggestions for sites that would be suitable to be redeveloped or constructed. We hired a broker to go out and scour what was available. We also looked at what district-owned land existed. In this particular location, knowing that there are some other community challenges, we already had things in place before we got to this site to address some of those concerns. And so, for example, the Aussie bus lots, for example, we already have been working to procure another location for the site on New York Avenue and the other site that's off of Queens Chapel Road. We are looking at and already have funding for a day center in a different location that would be more centralized. So knew that irrespective of this location, we would be moving in that direction. We're starting to have conversations about our single men's system and what the impacts are there, and so there's potential to re-examine where the single men's facilities are, particularly the one on Adams Place as well. And we had engaged in conversations about having a new and better system at New York Avenue for single men's, one that would be smaller, with a facility that would be updated, that really would be best in class and best practice as we're trying to make the family shelter. So even before we settled on this location, those specific things were in works and in play to help address some of what the concerns are about how we operate, and quite frankly, address some of the impacts that exist in that community.
So again, I would just urge and ask that you all work with the community in my office. If not, first of all, I ask that it be relocated, and I ask that there be sort of an analysis of the existing impact of these types of services on Ward 5. But also, if you ultimately determine that this has to be the location for whatever reasons, that there's an effort to eliminate or remove some of the existing services that are being provided, or the challenges that are presented from having them there. Not that we don't need those types of services, I support them, and they're obviously necessary, but the oversaturation and the concentration in those neighborhoods, I think, what really presents the issues.
And that was my commitment yesterday in talking to the community leaders as we try to address with those issues.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mayor, and to your team, Director Zeilinger and Deputy Mayor Donald, and your whole team for presenting to us what I think is a very responsible and responsive plan for our city. I'm very pleased with the location that has been selected in Ward 4. The sentiment of Ward 4 leaders last evening was very positive and supportive, and really wanting to make sure that the people who need the help the most get it in a meaningful way, and that they have safe environments and all of the support services that they need. So I've been very pleased with your team's leadership in ensuring yesterday that the people in Ward 4 knew everything, and it was laid out very clearly and concisely for them. So thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to putting into productive reuse the building at 5th and Kennedy. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilmember Evans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. And I, too, want to thank and congratulate the mayor and her staff on putting together a very comprehensive plan that is going to accomplish a number of our goals. Certainly in my number of years here, I've seen plans come and go that have not worked. And I think it's going to take a collective effort on behalf of everyone in this government, the council, the mayors, the executive branch, attorney general, everyone, to make sure that we accomplish our goals. I do have 2 or 3 questions I just wanted to ask quickly. It's already been said, but once again, what is the time frame we're looking at to implement the plan and be out of DC General?
The sites will deliver according to the schedule that we have between January and September of 2018.
Okay.
And that assumes construction processes, land use processes, and of course the starting of the council approval.
Okay, so in all likelihood, we will be at DC General through 16 and through 17?
Through
That's
7.
correct.
That's correct.
And then we plan to be out maybe the spring of 18?
Fall of 18.
Fall of
Fall of
18.
18. Fall of 18. Okay, so going into the winter of 18, we should be out of DC General.
That's correct.
Okay. The second question is, you indicated you're looking to the council for a sense of the council, which is something we just kind of give our opinion, yes, this is a good idea. Are you asking council for anything more than that?
Yes.
Okay.
So the sense of the council, well, we'll work with you on the language, of course, and ultimately you will decide. But that is around the zoning package. So any approvals that are needed, we're hopeful that you will share our view that any zoning approvals should be considered together. Okay. So we think that this plan hangs together, and we want all of those any relief that we'll need to seek, that they be considered together.
Okay, and that'll be coming to the council in the next month or so, would you say?
This week.
This week, oh,
Yes.
great, very good. And then finally, to the director, 216 is a big number. I think you said 215.
But Jack, before you move off of
Okay,
that,
sure.
we will our OPLA team will talk to each of you in particular about what the legislation will provide for. But there are other approvals that will be needed in terms of contracts and leases and the like. And so our way of approaching this is to deal with it like the council dealt with the soccer stadium, to say that we approve these things with these parameters, and as long as they come in with these parameters, then we're going to approve them. It's our intent to approve them, and that's how we're laying it out. So we will lay out what we anticipate to be those approvals and the parameters that we need, and ask you to approve them as one package. And then as they are ready, we'll send them to the council for passive approval.
Okay, very good. And I'm very supportive of what you're doing, but the question I'm getting is 200 is a big number for one facility. And so what are your thoughts on that, and how are we going to take care of that?
Yeah, I think ideally we would like to have programs that are smaller. We've had some opportunity with this site, though, to construct it in a way that we think we can achieve the level of service and the type of programming that we will achieve the same goals. So we look forward to walking that with you, but there are a lot of, each floor has all of its own, can operate almost as its own program with its own place for meals, dormitory rooms that are of a fairly small size relative to the way our low barrier shelter operates, in restroom facilities and so forth. We also have some single rooms as well. And we will have, Unity will operate a clinic on site, and we'll be able to have an area where women who have high medical needs, which we don't have any place for in our system right now, will also be able to provide a special set of services there. So it is a really strategic use of that building, and it is set up, and programmatically, I think we'll be able to do it in a way that achieves our goal around setting a new tone for the way we provide services in our low barrier system on the single side.
Well, at some time, we should get together and talk more about that.
Yes, sir.
But again, thank you, congratulations. But it's, as you know, a first step, that it's a collective effort. I would really like to see this work after all these years of things not working. I really want to see this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilmember Silverman?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly echo the sentiments of my colleagues. I really want to applaud you, Mayor Bowser, and Director Zeilinger, and Director Greenwald, too, for putting significant political capital and focus into providing safe, dignified family housing for our homeless families. I think that's significant. I think the small shelter approach is the right thing to do. And I will say, Councilmember May, so I visited 7 of the 8 sites, including the Ward 8 site. I did not visit the Ward 1 site yet. But I think the challenge here is making sure that treatment is as equal and fair as possible for both our homeless residents and our neighborhoods. And I say that because I think there are varying levels. I think you've spent a lot of time talking about that all the sites will have equal services inside, but I am concerned about access to services outside, because I think some of the different sites have different access to transportation, for example, access to employment. We know that having income is one of the key factors in escaping homelessness and getting on that pathway to the middle class. And I am concerned that some sites are more challenged in terms of helping people get to work. Some are near metros, some are not, some are on only one bus line, some are on multiple bus lines. So, I would echo, even though I very much think this is the right thing to do, I am concerned that depending on where you're located, you might have different access to employment opportunities. I think schools, I would echo what Councilmember Grasso said. You might have different access to school options, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts about that.
So those are all great points and values that we share. We made sure that in every site there was access to public transportation, and making sure that all of them were equally on a metro line. We would not be sitting here with a real plan to close DC General if that was the requirement. So we worked with what we could, we did the best we could with what was in the market or in district inventory. But I want to also be clear too that absolutely families need access to employment, but not every family has to have a job to exit homelessness. And that what we can do is help families with both at the same time, because we know when families are in permanent housing, that's when they actually do best. So we do absolutely, the employment services are a focus while people are in shelter, but also in short-term housing, but very much so with the supports that they have as they exit. So we want to make sure that we're understanding and clearly what is the role of the homeless system, which is to provide that place of safety with the appropriate services that families need coming out of the crisis that usually they are in when they come into homelessness, and really well supported to successfully move out in the community. And they do absolutely have access to services outside and inside of the program to do that, and we think we can accomplish that very well in the plan that we've laid out.
Councilmember Orange?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And also, I just want to join the chorus in thanking the mayor and her team for putting together a great plan that's titled here as A Fresh Start to Ending Family Homelessness. And the fact that it's inclusive and that it involves the entire city. And so the entire city will be part of this solution. And I think that speaks volumes in and of itself. It's not like we're operating in silos, but we're bringing everybody, all the residents, everyone in DC to be a part of this. But my question really goes to page 14, investing in solutions that work. And we indicate that there's an annual cost to operate DC General at $17 million. And then I wonder if you can elaborate upon the annual cost to replace DC General is approximately $22 million annually. So what does that $22 million entail? I mean, is first year, after you construct all of this, it will still be $22 million on an annual basis? Just kind of understand the finances a little bit more.
So, Councilmember, thank you for the question. So, the $22 million is really the lease and estimated program costs for the facilities that we would construct or enter into. So that is as compared to the operating and services costs that exist now at DC General. So that's really what that point of comparison is.
Okay, so this $22 million doesn't deal with the construction of all these units and actually making them operational.
No, it is the operating cost of those units. So if the construction cost, many of our sites are leased sites, and so the construction cost or the redevelopment cost will be built into the lease over the term of the lease. There are sites in which the district will construct a facility. That cost is not reflected in the $22 million number. So this is just the operating cost of the facility and the programmatic cost of the facility.
Okay.
But that includes construction on most of the sites. The cost of construction is rolled into the lease.
It's rolled into the lease for those sites that we are leasing. That's correct.
Okay.
That's the mayor's.
And since these, are not relatively big construction projects, is there going to be an avenue for our CBEs to have some type of opportunities to maybe build all these facilities? So they're not huge like the stadium.
No, absolutely. So for those sites for which the district will construct, that would include the Ward 7 site and the Ward 8 sites primarily. There will be a CBE goal that's greater than 35%. We're targeting 50%. For those sites that are being developed for us, for which the private sector will develop it and lease it back to us, we can't compel them to our CBE goal, but we certainly are going to emphasize and be aggressive in getting them to make those opportunities available as they redevelop or construct those facilities.
Okay. And so out of these 8 sites, how many sites does the government actually own or control?
We will own the site in Ward 7 and the site in Ward 8. We will also own the improvements of the building in Ward 1. But that is also a ground lease, so we'll lease the dirt for 30 years, but the facility that gets constructed will be an improvement that we own.
Great. Well, once again, thank you very much. I think it's a great plan and look forward to doing whatever I can to assist in bringing it to fruition.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Chairman, and special thanks to Mayor Bowser and her team. This is a great plan. It's a great plan because we are closing DC General. It's a great plan also because we're bringing people into neighborhoods. They are our neighbors for the most part, and we want to make sure that they are incorporated into the neighborhood. I know it's short term, and that's what this plan is about. It's about housing for short term. So while next year, a few years from now, we'll have a different group of people perhaps that will occupy these facilities. I mean, that's the way it works in an urban area. And I think we have to understand that. I am appreciative of the fact that you're going to have the social services there. You're going to try and address the needs of individuals. There are 1 or 2 little structural tweaks that I think you might come to look at, as I was telling Laura, but I think it's really a very good plan and you're to be commended. And I think you have sentiment from all of us across this council that we are very appreciative, and we're looking forward to seeing these structures come into being in the neighborhood and having the residents, these new residents, as a part of our family of neighbors. Thank you.
And Councilmember, if I just might add, Laura started the conversation with talking about the three things that will make this program work. We know what the law requires, and we also know what our values require in housing homeless families. But none of us should forget that a key part to this working is that we're equally or even doubling down on what we do for affordable housing. Folks this is what we want to make sure is that we have a safe place for families to get housing first so that they can move on to permanent housing. We think in a city of our size with the legal framework that we have around homelessness that we're always going to need about 280 emergency units, always. But we always have to be investing in that 0 to 30% for affordable housing, up to 50% for affordable housing. So families, once they get stabilized and get a good paying job, there's actually a place for them to rent. So I just want to thank you, council member, and all the council members for your leadership around what the city can do around investing in affordable housing.
Before we move on to the next item, just so that members understand, we'll be receiving legislation from the mayor this week. The legislation will approve the acquisition and construction plan as presented here, approve generally the leases and construction contracts, will authorize formal approval of the leases and contracts by resolution as they come down, and state a sense of the council in support of the zoning.
Yes.
Let's move on then to the next item, because we have we're through number 2 and we've got 5 more.
Thank you, Councilmember.
And Councilmember May asked if we could move up. I want to talk about universal paid leave, and then if there's no objection, we'll take the Congress Heights update. On the universal paid leave, I released last night a discussion draft of a bill. I've sometimes called it a draft print. It's not close to what will be presented to the Committee of the Whole for markup. The purpose of the discussion print is to help focus comments and public testimony. We have another hearing coming up on a number of key issues that are at play in this legislation. For instance, what the makeup is of the participant pool, the definition of family for purposes of qualifying for benefits, what a qualifying event is, what the maximum leave is. The bill is introduced, called for 16 weeks. What the wage replacement rate is. The bill is introduced at 100% wage replacement. That's an issue where the discussion draft makes some changes. Waiting period, that's another issue that's at play. The Committee of the Whole is having another hearing this Thursday. We have something like over 150 witnesses. I've told folks that they cannot expect to speak for more than 3 minutes, and probably questions from council members will be limited as well. Because with that many witnesses, I expect that hearing will go on till midnight easily. There is not a markup date that's set. In fact, I think that the discussion draft that we released yesterday is, as I said, meant to stimulate comments and help to focus comments on the legislation. But it's pretty clear that there are going to have to be some more, quite a bit more, iterations in the drafting process as we look at different issues. The key thing is to balance benefits with cost, and we will be working with the Chief Financial Officer on that as well. I'm happy to take questions if there are any. Then why don't we move on
Can
to...
you?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to see what you circulated. I heard the categories, but what is the proposal?
Well, it's not really fair to say it's a proposal.
Okay,
It's
what's
just
in
a
the
draft that
discussion?
went out.
What is the discussion? What are the discussion items?
Well, the participant pool in the what was circulated yesterday is narrower than what was in the bills introduced. The definition of family is more strictly adheres to legal relationships. Qualifying events is narrowed somewhat, including the definition of serious health condition. The maximum leave in what was circulated would be 12 weeks instead of the 16 weeks. And the wage replacement, instead of being 100%, would be 90%. wage replacement for employees earning less than double the district's minimum wage, and above that would be 50%. And the waiting period, that's kind of complicated to explain, but the draft that was circulated would have a waiting period. It's not really a waiting period, but that employees would have to use the accrued sick and safe leave that's provided under the Accrued Safe and Sick Act first. That's something like 3 or 5 days, depending upon the employment. And also, a lot of people don't realize this, but that as the bill is introduced, didn't have a waiting period in it, but it did say that the benefit is a percentage of the average weekly pay over the preceding 52 weeks. If you think about it, if you've worked 1 day, then your average weekly pay over the preceding 52 weeks is 0. So the bill is introduced, has a waiting period in it, and that's in the discussion print as well.
So the waiting period is a year?
No.
What is the waiting period?
If you work a day, the waiting period, the benefits would be 0. If you've worked half a year, then it would be roughly half of your weekly earnings. If you've worked a full year, then it would be based on 100% of your weekly earnings.
And what is the mechanism to execute it?
I believe the discussion draft does not make changes in that area, but that is something that is still we're looking at because
So the 1% tax on employers?
That's going to be a function of how this plays out when we get the economic analysis.
Okay. And you contemplate it being run like an unemployment insurance
The general
program?
concept is similar to unemployment insurance. Money is paid into a fund. The fund brings in, at 1%, would bring in something like $330 or $350 million a year. So the benefits would have to be equal to or less than that.
And what is the impact on DC government?
The bill makes no change with regard to DC government.
And the federal government?
We can't legislate for the federal government.
When you say it makes no change?
There's a program that was adopted by the council 2 years ago that provides 100% wage replacement for, I believe it's 8 weeks. Yeah. And we don't, the discussion draft doesn't touch that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that won't be in play. And in fact, as I said, the first item I mentioned was participant pool. That's one of the issues that's at play here.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make sure that we discuss the reasons why there was no certification for the bill as introduced. There was no fiscal impact prepared. And I thought it would be helpful, and I'm assuming that the CFO hasn't gone through the discussion draft like we haven't at this point, but if you could discuss what the items are that you're considering in order to certify any proposal.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As everyone's aware, there was a significant hearing not that many weeks ago where we went through some of the issues and concerns we had about certification of the legislation as currently drafted. This is before the new draft, which we have not yet seen nor reviewed. I just want to remind everyone of the issues that will need to be addressed in this bill. This is a slide that was in the hearing presentation we had toward the end of what, after going through the concerns we had with some of the elements of the bill and some of the challenges, these are the issues that we wanted to lay out as you go through this discussion draft or whatever the term that we have for it is, that need to be addressed for certification as the bill goes forward. And the fundamental one is the program contributions must cover the projected benefits, kind of an elementary thing we talked about is if you're reducing the pool, then the pool of participants and the amount of revenue collected, obviously the benefits will have to correspond with that. We had expressed our concerns. There were many witnesses that came forward with different levels of estimates. We have been in detailed discussions with all those and are in the process of processing that discussion as we speak. And one of the elements in the current draft, the current legislation, was that our interpretation was if there was a shortfall, the district would have to make it up. That's an anti-deficiency problem from a legal standpoint, not to mention a significant financial risk if there's a shortfall. to the district that the changes would have to address. And so out past the, whatever we collect, the benefits must cover on an annual basis, and there can't be any shortfalls from the district. There's a simple fundamental elements of any legislation that comes forward is we have to have a budget for it. So there has to be a budget for, if there's a system that's going to have to be built and developed to operate it, that needs to be included in the bill or the funding. The cost to house the additional employees that will be required, their equipment, the space, the employee salaries to administer will need to be covered, and we identified those as being rather significant given the broad scope of this, which is larger than the unemployment insurance program in terms of what it would have to cover. And then if the bill does expand the program within the district, which is 8 weeks of full pay for family leave, which our experience with that in the last year has been about over 8% of the employees took it, and they took the entire 8 weeks. If that expands, that has to also be covered. And in any funding, we can't assume we'll absorb it. We now know that it's rather significant, and if it goes to 12 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever for the employees, that will have to be budgeted. So sort of summarizing it, if it goes into the district, we have to have that cost identified and covered. The implementation, the new system costs have to be covered. The covering of the shortfall cannot put the district at risk of doing that. And fundamentally, whatever program is, we would do the evaluation and look at all the data out there and make sure that whatever this tax collects, the benefits cannot exceed that in any way. So those are the fundamental certification issues that as this draft goes forward and becomes legislation, goes through the process, in the normal course of business, we would then do our fiscal impact analysis to ensure the bill could be approved and passed. Thank you.
Yeah, so we won't be asking for a fiscal impact statement until we're closer to having the final committee print.
Mr. Chairman, just finally, what does the print contemplate as an effective date?
I think we're going to collect the fee for something like a year before or phase in the fee for a while to be able to pay for the administrative costs. But I don't think we have. So we don't have a date. The draft right now is the CFO would have to certify that there's a year's worth of benefits that have accumulated in the fund before the funds would be available. And there also would be a phase, and I don't know that this would be part of that to cover the administrative costs. So if we're going to spend, there was testimony at the hearing, this is not an area that we've yet looked at thoroughly. If there was testimony at the hearing, it could cost $20 to $40 million to start up, the IT and so forth. Well, we'd want to raise that money before the program implemented. Otherwise, that's a cost that we would have to budget. And I know the city administrator is sitting on a lot of money available for budgeting.
Okay, so to be clear, there's nothing in your draft that says this is going to be effective and available on October the 1st?
Of this year?
Yeah.
No.
Does it say it of next year? October of 2017? I just need to be clear about, and I think what you're asking us to be prepared to do.
I think it's too soon to have a date. I mean, we don't even have a markup date. So if we mark it up in... If we mark it up in the next few months, then that would be one answer. If we mark it up at the end of the council period, that'd be a different answer. But they're phase-ins. I don't think we changed this in the discussion print. Claims under this title should not be administered until at least 1 year after the effective date of the act, and the CFO is certified that the fund will remain solvent for at least 1 year after claims have begun to be paid. Did you have any other questions?
No, I'll have more questions after you. So who's invited to this hearing?
The hearing that's coming up this Thursday is the typical council format for a hearing, which is anybody who wants to testify can. And so we've had over 100 and We have 140 witnesses right now.
Okay.
So folks are limited to 3 minutes. I strongly suggest that if you have detailed substantive comments that you don't use the hearing as the place to do it. Now, we've already had 2 hearings. And we had the first hearing was, in fact, the first 2 hearings were essentially invitation only. And so we had quite detailed testimony, including at the second hearing in January. I think we had 3 financial analyses or analysts. The whole purpose of the discussion draft is to get more comments, but the comments begin to get more focused. Instead of just talking about how this is too expensive or talk about how this is really beneficial, to instead talk about these moving parts and what makes the most sense to get the right balance.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just end by reiterating our desire to have a working group with the council to go over these very complicated issues because we will be expected to implement whatever the council decides. And at this point in the discussion, not knowing even where you're going with when it would start, it's difficult. And I think that the idea of passing something this complicated that's going to require a start-up, how many people did you tell me run our unemployment? 220 people run our unemployment program, and I think your estimate is that many more people will qualify and use this benefit than use unemployment insurance. So what you're talking about is standing up almost another agency in the government, and we have to be very intentional about that. So the idea that we can just do that over several months, and I don't care how many hearings it is difficult. It's difficult for us to grasp. So we want a successful program that's going to work, but we have to be at the table.
Sure. Well, we've been working with your folks, and we'll continue to do that. Let's move on then to, if there's no objection, to the Congress Heights update.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'll try to be mindful of the clock and be brief, and apologize for referring to my notes. And of course, I know that the council had a roundtable hearing last week that was well attended. Councilmember May was there, Councilwoman Silverman, Councilwoman Bonds, and of course the chairman, Mr. Mendelson, along with a real bunch of witnesses, including tenants and housing advocates. But let me get down to the basic legal facts and also provide you with the status of where we are now given yesterday's hearing. The basic facts are as follows. On January 8th, 2016, the Office of Attorney General filed an action against Sanford Capital and certain managers, as well as the 4 LLCs who are responsible for managing 4 buildings at Congress Heights. Our complaint seeks the appointment of a receiver and declaratory and injunctive relief. The basis of our complaint is that the landlord has repeatedly failed to maintain habitable conditions at the 4 buildings at issue. As you know, this has been written about. The Abigail House loaner in the Washington Post has done a fantastic job in at least 2 exhaustive pieces. The types of suitability and habitability violations include allowance of mice, rodents, lack of heat, air conditioning, water, mold problems, and unsafe conditions. These conditions have existed and persisted over a long period of time, and we allege in our complaint that the pattern and practice of allowing these conditions to continue are a public nuisance, certainly violate the landlord's rights, and we allege make it appropriate for the court to consider a receivership. A receivership, in short, would recognize that the landlord has not been doing its job in regards to maintaining the property, can't be trusted to do so, given months of failure to fulfill its basic obligations, and therefore identifying a receiver to do what the landlord has not done would be appropriate. I should note that there are 15 remaining tenants at the Congress Heights properties. These individuals have been strong and valiant in choosing to not leave their property and instead choosing to assert their rights. All of these individuals wish to remain in their properties. Some of the individuals have lived in those buildings for upwards to 30 years. Yesterday in court, the landlord's tenant asked the court to dismiss OAG's complaint. The court denied that request. The court, in fact, found that the landlord has a legal obligation to maintain the building in a suitable fashion, clean, safe, and secure. Our motion to have a receiver put in place to manage the properties at Congress Heights was deferred until the 24th of this month. The court indicated that it would provide the landlord an opportunity to fix remaining violations, as well as to put together a comprehensive plan to ensure that conditions are maintained in an appropriate way going forward. And so we're in that period of time right now where the landlord is getting his plan together. Depending on what we see from the landlord, we'll make the decision, of course, in consultation with the tenants as to whether to persist in our seeking a receivership. That's the state of affairs. I would add that certainly as the chairman and the members of the council who were at the hearing last week no doubt know now, there are problems with the TOPA law. Most particularly, as we know, what happens after a development is approved, a PUD, I guess is what the term is that there's a lag period that allows the landlord, like the landlord Sanford Capital in this instance, to not move forward with the demolition plan. The demolition plan is incredibly important because it is that plan that triggers the required notice that's to be given to the tenants so that they might exercise their rights under TOPA. Without the demolition plan, what we allege in the complaint is that the landlord has maintained the buildings in a condition that essentially has resulted in dozens of tenants being forced to relocate and thereby not be able to avail themselves of the demolition plan. In fact, in court yesterday, the judge asked counsel for the landlord why it was or it is that a demolition plan hasn't been filed and whether the landlord in fact has an intention to do so and when will that landlord do so. Counsel was not able to provide the court with any response and indicated that he's not sure when such a plan would be forthcoming. These are legislative issues for policymakers, but I would suggest to you that it's quite significant that a landlord like the landlord, as we allege in this case, can over a period of a year have housing conditions in the order of 200 violations, mice, rodents, unsanitary and unsafe places, and create a situation where dozens of people won't be able to avail themselves of the rights that you gave them is a problem. I look forward to working with you to abate those issues.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Bonds?
Yeah, I just want to see if I understand what you've said. You've indicated that the judge has deferred the hearing to the 24th.
That's correct.
And allowing the landlord to fix the issues and to put together a plan for upkeep into the future.
That's correct.
Well, you know, the TOPA law really requires that at the time that a landlord is going to do demolition or to sell the property, that the tenants are to be notified. in this particular case, the zoning commission has given tentative approval of plans into the future once the landlord acquires all of the lots that they need in order to do the plan that they presented to zoning. And according to zoning's attorney, that is proper approach to these kinds of issues. In other words, there are about 4 different conditions in which a zoning can give their approval. And so the landlord met one of those conditions. But where TOPA law and the zoning approval process do not come together is because, as you say, there's this lag time. And so we're working on trying to figure out how do we address that. But as you well know, zoning is very powerful by statute. They can make certain determinations, and I don't know what we can do at the council to change the methodology that zoning uses. But perhaps we can, because that's where the lag time can come into play. And we end up with these situations. We're looking at some other kinds of remedies through legislation that we'd like to continue to work with your office on. But we believe that there is a way to address some of the ongoing issues with TOPA.
We think so as well, and certainly look forward to working with you on that. Just on 2 points, I think Councilwoman Silverman actually raised these issues at the hearing, and that is there was discussion of a bad actor rule,
exactly.
Wherein if even a developer who has already obtained a development plan is shown to have essentially become a bad actor, there might be an opportunity to rescind prior grants, and of course the contemplation of a requirement at some point for the filing of a demolition plan might make sense. It would give landlords less of an incentive to not do what they're supposed to do, in the hopes that they'll have to deal with less tenants when those tenants acquire their rights.
I suggested to zoning if there was a way to actually have, at the time that a case comes before them, that the landlord be required to indicate the names, addresses of individuals that are currently on the property in question, so that they can notify those individuals or send out a notice indicating that there's a case before us. Then at the time that they make a decision, notify those individuals again that we have rendered a decision saying thus and so that, any tenants are included in the decision. At least they are aware that a decision has been made.
Councilmember May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and your team for the work and for being an advocate for the residents at Congress Park. The Congress Heights property in question. Unfortunately, in Ward 8, we have a lot of slumlords, right? And this isn't the only property that we have, and we've been trying to find a vehicle to be able to address eviction through neglect, which is happening to far too many of our residents. So we look forward to kind of continuing to work with you, not just specifically on this property, but all of the properties, and trying to find that vehicle that we can use to be able to address those issues. The time period between now and the 24th, where the landlord is given an opportunity to remedy, are you comfortable with the full extent of the damages in each unit right now that you have, or is it something we need to be able to go back to the residents and kind of figure that out? And then the other part of that is not only for the units where people are living in. We know that, I've asked MPD to do a safety investigation of vacant units, and so there's some safety issues with the units that are not occupied, and do the non-occupied units come into play as it relates to the remedy?
Sure. Those are excellent questions. First, we very much look forward to working with you and other council members with respect to slumlord issues. Of course, that leads right into the affordable housing discussion that the mayor is extraordinarily passionate about. So we look forward to working with you on that. Second, you asked about kind of what's going on now during the time period between now and the 24th. The court required the landlord to meet with our team yesterday after court, also to meet with the DCRA housing inspector. In fact, one inspector was specifically assigned to identify the current deficiencies. The court further ordered the landlord to get to work immediately on the current deficiencies, and at the same time to put together a plan going forward. It obviously is in the great interest of the landlord, who is seeking to avoid a receivership, to make sure that everything is fixed. And in regards to your question about the units that are not occupied, those units are a huge problem. As you know, I know you've been at the property, those units are a huge problem because those units, number one, are not safe and secure. Squatters come in, others come in and engage in criminal conduct. Moreover, it's really those open spaces that are the access points for mice, rodents, and the rest. And so the court specifically required the landlord to clean and then secure those uninhabited units.
Thank you.
Councilmember Silverman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'll be really brief. I just want to thank the Attorney General, Ms. Ludaway, for working on this issue. You know, the conditions that we heard at the hearing are just unconscionable. I'll add in to what the Attorney General said. We heard about residents having to use their oven to heat their homes or purchase space heaters on HSN because they had no heat. After multiple complaints to Sanford that they had their boiler system wasn't working properly, and I just don't think that's a condition that any of us want district residents to be put in. I'll add in an additional issue that was troubling. So, as the Attorney General said, I think that there's opportunity for us to look at TOPA, to look at a bad actor law, but as well, there were allegations that Sanford was sort of gaming our housing voucher system by putting residents with housing vouchers in their properties that created conditions where they could. Those with housing vouchers wouldn't be able to live in those conditions, and then they'd be able to sort of depopulate the property, and residents would already be displaced. And there were allegations that that was a sort of deliberate strategy that Sanford had, and I thought that was very troubling as well. So I look forward to working with you, Attorney General, look forward to working with our housing chair, Ms. Bonds, and hope to get a better situation for these residents and also apply what happened here to other properties which might have similar problems. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak.
Thank you. Let's move on to the DPR proposed regulations. Can you speak to that? I know this was an issue that Councilmember Bonds had brought up.
Well, in the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, I think that we have provided you with the slides. And Keith, where's Keith?
Right here, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Keith is here, and we can go through the slides, or you can just ask your questions, whatever is appropriate.
Councilmember Bonds and
Okay,
Councilmember.
all right, thank you, Chairman. All right, well, I think I'd like to go through the slides, but the issues that were brought to my attention were the irregularity of knowing schedules, particularly from a few seniors, the cost factor for some services that they weren't familiar with having to pay for in the past. So what I'd like to do now that I have this is to take a look at this and maybe have a conversation with you if there is more information that's needed, because I want to be able to share this with the 4 or 5 young women had talked to me about this.
So you want to have a subsequent conversation about this?
Yes, I think
Okay.
that's best in the
That's
interest
fine.
of time, yeah.
That's fine.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just very briefly have Keith say something about the regulations that are proposed, but just stepping back a bit, we want a transparent system that's predictable and people know what it costs. I will say that I have a particular interest in this.
Yes.
This is just one step there, but I frankly think that we have invested millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in our facilities, and we have been kind of haphazard about how we market those facilities and how we charge for those facilities, and I think that there are better ways to do it. So we will be working over the next months about a system that makes sense, because we really should be getting more out of the public space that we have.
Keith?
Yes, and thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll just touch on some very high points in the interest of time. If you didn't know, DPR has over 900 acres of green space, 31 urban gardens, 375 parks, 11 dog parks, 94 playgrounds, 112 athletic fields, and 336 tennis and basketball courts, and 11 indoor swimming pools, 19 outdoor swimming pools. In fiscal year 2015 alone, 1.5 million people visited our recreation centers. In fiscal year 2015 alone, over 300,000 people visited our aquatic facilities, where we had a record-breaking 200,000 guests over the summer. And we unfortunately had 70 active rescues in our aquatic facilities, where the good news is everyone went home. So without question, DPR facilities experience significant demand due to our offerings and our award-winning public parks and recreation facilities. Thus, these new regulations are designed to maximize, and I'll just skip through this really quick, maximize community and facility use. A couple points that I want to highlight on these regulations is that through these regulations, it was important for us to ensure that small nonprofit groups and that serve low-income participants and senior citizens receive waivers and discounts. Another point that I want to make sure that everyone understands that's not here is that with these regulations, seniors will receive an additional 25% discount on all DPR activities. These rules will also allow DPR to more efficiently schedule facility use and provide more equitable access to its courts and facilities. The revenue that we project that we will receive from these fee-based use permits will go back into programming for our facilities. The fee-based use permits will also allow for expanded sponsorships and partnership opportunities. And to the mayor's point, the rules will provide transparency in how we prioritize our decisions when permitting our facilities. Lastly, what I would like to show is a timeline for the regulations. This is our projected timelines, and a couple of these things have already happened. I'm pleased to say that on January 1st, we proposed our regulations in the DC Register. The comment period ended on February 1st, and we are currently in the review and response period. We had about over 50 comments to the regulations that we are currently responding to now. We will respond to those comments individually. Once we have responded to the comments and everything has been approved, we look forward to submitting the rules to council in March. Through April, we will continue to communicate to the public what these changes mean. We actually had 3 stakeholder meetings during the comment period, so we have heard from the public not only through the comments, but they've come to our office to participate in the stakeholder meetings, and we look to implement the regulations sometime between April and June.
Councilman Muriel?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Director and Deputy Mayor, as well. This is, the council passed this thing in 2013, so it's been almost 3 years to get these regulations here, so thank you.
That's correct.
I think I've asked you about it at every hearing, so I appreciate you finally getting here. So thank you very much for the work that's gone into it. And kind of to the mayor's point about the great investments we've made in our facilities, and then to your point, great programming that we do have there.
Yes.
I think it still drives everybody crazy when we see a field that's not programmed or we see space that's not being used, and that to me is why this is so important, is to be able to leverage those third-party entities that can help provide that.
That's correct.
Questions I had, one, so that everybody can understand a little bit about how it could work. So I could give you an example. At Sherwood Rec Center, we have the green space and the field space that sits empty most of the time, not really programmed. With this, you could have somebody, for example, that wants to run a soccer clinic or something like that. Could you just walk us through so we understand kind of how you envision it within DPR, and then kind of how the public would then be able to take advantage of an opportunity like that, how that additional programming would actually happen within the community and for our residents?
So a good example would be someone who may want to run a camp for the summertime on that green space. They would be able to apply for a fee-based use permit, and based on whatever criteria they submit, if they're for-profit or non-profit, we would give them a permit to use that space, and then they could run their camp on that property.
And the way that people would sign up for that, in terms of the issue around the fees and access, how would
they could
the public
advertise
access that?
if they are a programmatic partner of DPR. They would sign up for the camp through DPR's registration system. If they are not a programmatic partner, the onus would be on that organization to advertise their services and to register folks for that program or activity.
Got it. And then in terms of your internal prioritization, so you've got multiple people that all want the field at the same time. How do you internally prioritize?
So these regulations will, there would be, the way we prioritize our decisions, DPR programs, nonprofits that serve youth, will make it clear how we prioritize those programs. And so it's spelled out in the regulations, and I could point that to you.
We can look at that afterwards. The last question I had was, in terms of the public comment period, I actually didn't realize it had already closed, so that was a pretty fast comment period.
It was out for 30 days, yes.
And maybe it's something you can kind of look at later. One of the things that we've talked about before, I'm concerned because if we're not creating the type of programming or the type of partnerships that people are looking for within DPR, so I think there is a bucket of programs and activities that don't feel like they fit within DPR, and this is one avenue by which they can create those partnerships that we want. Did we do any outreach to that group so that they can talk about how this would work for them, or did we only look internally to reach the people who already have that interaction with DPR?
So we've done a tremendous amount of community outreach through surveys and through just knocking on doors and looking and asking the community, what is it that you want to see at your recreation center?
And you feel that's, in those 50 comments that came in, you feel that's kind of reflected through there?
In addition to that, there was a permit task force that was created with various organizations that were able to address some of their needs up front that we put into the regulations. So I'm confident with the permit task force and us going out to the public that we addressed a lot of the needs up front in the regulations that were proposed in January.
Great. Well, thank you, Director. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have specifics we can follow up on later, but
Absolutely.
I appreciate your work on this.
Absolutely.
Mr. Grasso.
Yes, thank you. I also want to say that I'm glad to see these are finally coming around, and it's important. I have a little bit of concern because, people see the facilities out there and they wonder why they're not being used. And a lot of those facilities are actually DCPS facilities. They're not Parks and Rec. And so my staff and I are going to be working on it this budget cycle to begin to better understand what we can do. In the past, we have tried to move legislation, as you know, to open up the DCPS facilities more for public use. That's something that we haven't been able to really get down and do yet. So all I'm asking is that as you start to roll this idea out and you have the concepts behind it, you recognize that down the road, it would be good if we could seamlessly integrate the DCPS facilities as well, especially the outdoor stuff. The fields that people walk by every day that are not being used, most people just go ahead and use them when they can get in them. But the fact is, if we had a way to systematically assign the use of this space. Now, I've met with a couple of for-profit companies that do this as well, where they actually help you organize all your fields and put them online and then have a whole registration and fee system that's transparent and pretty seamless, so that, you know, if you have a camp that gets use of a field, but they're only using it on Thursday evenings, you can go ahead and be sophisticated enough that you also use it all the other days of the week. We don't do that right now, and so people get very frustrated because they see the field is, open and not being used, and wonder why they can't use it, and it's locked in. Now, these regs, I don't think, get quite far enough, and that's all I'm saying, is that we need to work together. Madam Mayor, I hope you'll work with me on figuring out how to open up the DCPS facilities as well.
Well, Councilmember, you're singing to the choir right now, because I've been talking about this. Actually, I presented a piece of legislation when I was on the council about the community use of public facilities, and I've had experience when I worked in Montgomery County of how it can work differently. And so it's true as DPR, it's DCPS, it's also DCPL. I mean, it's fields,
National
gymnasiums. Well, that's another animal, but yes, that's true. But we also have some pretty fantastic auditoriums. We have great community rooms of all kinds that people can use for any number of activities. And you know what? They have a value. I mean, we have space, in this building people wouldn't mind using probably. So we should think about all of the public space that is directly in the control of the mayor, but also the public space that isn't, because all of those are public dollars that are supporting the construction of those facilities. So yes. The other part of it that we have spent less time talking about is the system has to be more transparent. And there are a lot of questions about, well, who gets to use this field? Why did they get it? Did they pay? And this principal doesn't like me, so I can't. So, we got to get rid of all of that. And we can do that with a system. Now, it will be a different way of doing things. A lot of people don't like it, but that will be helpful. The last thing I'll say about that is we have some facilities that are hotly demanded and others that are not. We should also use that system to encourage more equal use of our facilities across the city.
We got 3 more people, I think, in the lineup. Councilmember Nadeau.
Well, you're lucky because Councilmember Grasso was reading my mind, but I did have one additional point on the school use, and that is it's come to my attention that there are sometimes costs to the school associated with sharing the field, and that the revenue for that doesn't go back to the school, it goes into the fund. And if that could be rectified in some way as we're looking at the school uses, that there aren't any costs associated with actually sharing that space with the community. So whether that's cleaning or staffing or whatever it is, and that their costs are covered as a school and that their time is not taken trying to manage those parts of the facility as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Bonds.
Here you go.
Thank you, and thank you for this information. My concern is related to, I want to know where are community groups in the so-called pecking order, or as you prioritize the use of a field as an example. That's one of the big concerns. There are, as the mayor said very well, there are prime locations, or at least in the public side, locations where people prefer to have their gatherings, and there's usually a conflict because neighbors feel that, Georgetown Day School gets to come over to Woodridge and do their thing. You know what I'm talking about, okay?
And we have addressed that in the regs, and I'll be happy to go through it in more detail, the priority of uses, as you can see here in the regulations, and I'm happy to walk you through that.
All right, okay. And what does that mean? Does it mean that the neighborhood of Woodridge has priority for 6 months and Georgetown Day School has priority for the next 6 months?
Now, Councilmember, now you're talking about something entirely different, and that has been some ad hoc arrangements that the government has made with private entities.
Yes.
And not to say that they're bad, because that has helped us. These public-private partnerships have helped us invest in the properties. But I think they've been ad hoc. there's been no way to really gauge them kind of. So I don't want to bemoan having a public-private partnership because we're going to need them to keep our inventory fresh.
Oh, no. I mean, I understand that and most of government is complicated. So that's not where I'm headed. I'm headed to having an understanding. Is there some way to factor in the neighborhood? Because, people live there for 50 years and it's my park. Well, it was until 11 years ago or something like that. So I'm just trying to wonder, how do we resolve these issues? And that's just one location. There's the park in Southwest, parks around the city that are very special.
That's right.
Okay. And they've already told you so. I can tell.
Councilmember Alexander.
Thank you. I have two questions or issues with the permits. One, how long is the permit going to last for one organization? And I say that because I know that there are a lot of organizations year after year that get permits to do the same thing, and other groups have applied and it's like a standing permit for some groups. So I want to know, one, how long is the life of a permit and what is the process so that every group knows they have equal opportunity to apply for permits?
Right.
That's the first one.
Okay, a permit could last for 1 day or 3 months, and we have reprioritized what it means in terms of who gets what in permitting. DPR programs will always go first, but then organizations, nonprofit organizations that serve the low income or youth are a strong second. And so there are lists of priority permitted uses that we've outlined here that I'd be happy to discuss in detail with you.
And secondly, is there any community input before approval of permits? There have been some activities that the community complains about and they get a permit year after year.
We require that if you have a permit that's calling for an event that has more than 50 people, that you have to get a letter of support from the respective ANC.
Okay. The last question, is there going to be enforcement when there are groups that I know that use some of our courts, and I don't want to put what particular courts out there, but people provide lessons and they take money from private persons and the public doesn't have access to those courts. So is there an enforcement division that can actually report people illegally?
Right. So with these new regulations, one would be able to apply for a fee-based permit so they could actually do that kind of activity where they charge outside of one place. But yes, our park rangers will be enforcing permits on our fields, courts, and within our facilities.
So whoever is on that particular field, should they have something with them?
They should have the actual permit.
Okay.
They should have the actual permit with them.
Thank you. We've had issues in Ward 7.
And on that permit, it has the numbers to call in case you run into any problems.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it's 11:15. There are 2 items left. I know the mayor very much wanted to talk about SOAR, and we also had the Board of Elections.
All right, I'll be super quick. In fact, we figured out a way to abbreviate the SOAR discussion. You have the slides, and I'm going to circulate the letter that we signed together, Mr. Chairman, that supports a 3-sector approach to this funding, specifically $30 million for our public schools, DCPS, and the public charter schools, that without SOAR, we would have to make up some other way. And so we would encourage, and we will circulate a draft to the council and encourage all the council members to sign into it.
What you're looking for is a letter that's signed by you and as many council members as can to sign it.
Yes.
Okay, let me ask if there are any questions from members. Mr. Grasso?
Let me just start by saying I appreciate the kind of pickle that we're in with this. The fact is that when you have a $30 million gap in the budget that was created by federal intrusion into the district government, it's hard to make up that gap by saying something principled is not the right approach. I do want to thank my colleagues who did sign on, and I'll pass this letter around too. Earlier, late last year, to say basically that we're not going to continue to tolerate this, and that
we're going to step up and try to phase out this program in the District of Columbia. Now, it's one thing if we want to start it up on our own. Obviously, we wouldn't want to do that with Mr. Cruz' approach. I think we all agree on that. But at the same time, I have a hard time personally supporting something where, on one hand, we're asking for budget autonomy, and then the next hand, we are saying that we'll support something that may or may not be against our principles. I know not everybody agrees that vouchers is a bad thing, but I certainly think it's the wrong approach, and that we shouldn't be using private, schools or private establishments with public money for our education. And so I have consistently said, as the chair of the committee, that I don't support the SOAR program for that reason. I know that puts us in a pickle, and I appreciate that. I'm not trying to be naive about it. I know that's a lot of money. I would ask, though, that we take a close look at the evaluations that have happened. Since I worked with Congressman Norton years ago, we have regularly evaluated these programs. The GAO and others have joined in on that effort to try to understand if these programs make sense. And we've noticed in the district that it doesn't necessarily make sense. The graduation rates are not better. The students are not necessarily in great schools all the time, although they're in some good schools. And it's extremely expensive. The amount of money that's been invested for the number of students is, I think, outrageous. So, again, I would just ask my colleagues to not allow the District of Columbia to continue to be a testing ground for members of Congress that have spent their careers testing out their ideas on us, and instead step up and let's find the money in the local budget if we have to. Maybe we can take it out of the $2.18 billion that we have in reserves to slowly make sure that we're funding on both our sectors in our schools appropriately, rather than taking handouts from the federal government with strings attached like we've done now for all these years.
Mr. Chairman, if it would be okay, I wanted the Deputy Mayor to quickly run through what the reauthorization would allow for DCPS and the public charter schools.
Sure. So DCPS and public charter schools right now get $15 million a year each. And the way that DCPS has spent the funds is especially around human capital. DCPS anticipates that if they were to have a decrease of $15 million, that they would need to fire 150 teachers. It's about $100,000 per teacher. So such a hole for DCPS is very clear. For charter schools would be analogous, even if it isn't exactly experienced the same way. And so the charter schools have used the funding to expand high-quality schools, to improve the modernization, renovation of buildings, and also there have been a series of grants about academic improvements, academic achievement. And I think that Councilmember Grasso points out this is not an easy position to be in, but we also, this funding of $150 million specifically for charters and DCPS over a 5-year period is a really significant amount. And then the voucher is also $15 million each year, would be in addition to that. So it's not taking away funding from our DC public schools or public charter schools.
I signed a letter with the mayor in December because I view this as a federal program. And I don't like the idea of vouchers, but they're not asking that we spend local dollars, although Mr. Cruz would ask that we spend local dollars for vouchers. This is a federal program, and so we get for DCPS $15 million, we get for DC Public Charter Schools $15 million. And the price that we pay for that, if one doesn't like vouchers, is that the members of Congress who want vouchers get $15 million for vouchers. I would note that if the program were discontinued, the cost to the district, to our local funds, would not be $30 million. It would be more than that, because the youth who are in the voucher program would come back to the public education system. So we would have to pick up the cost for them as well. And I don't know what that is, but I know it's in the millions per year. My view is that this is a compromise that I'm not enthusiastic about, but that I support. And that's why I co-signed the letter with the mayor in December, because I think it's important that there is a voice from the leadership. And I guess the ask now is that if possible, we would like to get a majority of the council members to join in that statement as well. It makes those on the Hill who are sometimes our friends and other times our friends more comfortable if we make this statement.
Mr. Chairman, can I just respond to one thing you said real
Let me
quick?
get Mr. Orange and then... Sure.
Well, I also am going to back this as it's presented. And I know there's some people that have some unrest with the Opportunity Scholarship Program. Many of you know that I went to private school on a scholarship at 14 years old. So I do not have a problem with this. I think it's education by any means necessary. And if they want to put $50 million on the table for the next number of years, it's going to help some young person. Actually, I ran into a young man that was similarly situated to where I was when I was 14, and his mother approached me that he had gotten this scholarship and he was getting ready to go to, I think it was Gonzaga, one of the schools here, but he had to show up with a laptop. And so, we utilized our constituent services fund and bought him the laptop and the portable printer so he can compete like everyone else, at that level. So I think this is great, and I will be signing the letter. I know this is probably not the good time to push this issue, but I do want to keep this on the table, and I think that the TAG program should be expanded to include D.C. universities, in particular the University of the District of Columbia. I've had a discussion with Eleanor about that offline. I don't know if the climate is ready to take on that particular issue, but I think it's an injustice to us when our students can only utilize these dollars if they leave the District of Columbia, as opposed to being able to utilize those dollars here as well. And I know the Kathy Patterson, I hope she's still in the same place. Her and I actually wrote some letters and argued this point before. But our students shouldn't have to leave in order to engage in the DC TAG program. There should be another opportunity here, especially for the University of the District of Columbia.
Mr. Grassley.
Yes, thank you. Just finally, I'll just say that I have no problem with private money supporting students going to private school. I think that's a great use of people's philanthropy and their money. My problem is with federal or local or federal public money being used to pay for private school where we don't have the same regulation, the same oversight over what's being taught, over the treatment of students, whether it's be protections from discrimination, whether it be protections around Title IX issues. We don't have the same powers there. And so I'm saying that if we're going to spend public dollars, we should spend it where we have those kinds of oversights. And Mr. Chairman, I'll just note that this is not, I see what you're saying about a federal program, but it's not really a federal program. What this is a program that the federal government can't do nationally because they don't have the support to do it nationally. They can't do it in their own states because they don't have the support to do it in their own states. And so instead they do it here in the District of Columbia, on the people of the District of Columbia, without the full support of the people in the city. And so this is no different for me than banning the needle exchange program. It's no different than saying we can't spend local dollars on abortion support services. It's no different than all the other things that they've done, including stopping us from taxing and regulating marijuana in the District of Columbia. So, I understand that sometimes money talks, and that's what's going on here, is that we don't want to lose that money. I think we should step up and, invest in our schools fully. If we invest in our schools fully, and that means we got to spend another $30 million a year, let's do it. I'm all for it. I think we should put that in our budget and tell the federal government, no thank you. You can do your testing of these types of programs on someone else, and then ask our philanthropic community to step up and help the students that want to go to private schools like they've done historically for hundreds of years.
Well, it's different in a very critical way from the things that the council member just described. And that is that it's a three-pronged approach. So it wasn't like the federal government said, we're going to do this in district, just take it, you're not getting anything. Instead, there was a commitment, as we all know, the former speaker had, to a voucher program, but there was also an agreement. And the agreement was we are going to equally invest in DC public schools and DC public charter schools. And that was an agreement reached with our education leaders at the table who said this is going to be helpful for DC families and children. So I recognize and respect any differences that people have about vouchers, but I also recognize over the reauthorization of 5 years, which frankly I think if there was more consensus around the table, we wouldn't even be talking about now because it would have been approved. And I think that 5 years, $450 million worth of investment in DC kids, and that's an agreement that I'm happy to support.
Should we try to squeeze in the Board of Elections litigation?
It'll be very brief. Neva's going to handle that.
First, as everyone knows, on January the 29th, On January the 29th, the Superior Court ruled from the bench in favor of the plaintiff, in this case Harry Wingo's motion, denying the Board of Elections request for the referendum to be deemed valid. In so ruling, the judge indicated that he questioned that whether or not the members of the Board of Election were duly constituted. And essentially, the legal issue is whether or not the what applies, whether it's the Home Rule Charter, where there would not be any restriction as to the amount of time that those individuals could remain on the Board of Elections, versus the DC Code provision, where it has the 180-day restriction as to how long someone could be in office. Be on the Board of Elections. Where we are is on Friday, when we got that decision, we quickly got together, and on Monday we filed a motion to intervene in the case. We take the view that, of course, as the Office of Attorney General, we should be involved in such a critical decision, and that the Attorney General's office should be involved in the case as of right. The plaintiffs have opposed our motion. The judge has said that he is holding the decision whether we should come in abeyance right now, and he's going to rule on our motion to intervene. In terms of our participation, first, if for some reason that this judge were to deny our ability to intervene in the case, the assumption is that the case will go up on appeal, and we will, of course, file to intervene in the Court of Appeals, and we would expect that the Court of Appeals would allow us to participate. We believe that, first and foremost, that it would be helpful to the Board of Election for us to be involved in the case and for us to present the legal arguments. Second, of course, is just the very nature that while the Board of Elections is an independent agency, we do wish that we had been actively involved in the case early on, as opposed to now having to ask the court's permission to be involved, and being in a situation where it's up to a judge as to whether or not we participate on the Superior Court level, and having to rely on the case going up on appeal. So that's a second issue, which we expect that we'll come back to you on. But in terms of right now where the case is, we are actively involved, or at least we are actively trying to be involved.
And the issue is narrow, and that is one of reading the Home Rule Act against local law with regard to the ability to hold over.
Exactly. Under the legal theory is that the Board of Elections members, they are appointed pursuant to the Home Rule Act, and the DC Code provision that allows for the 180-day holdover, that it doesn't apply. That because of the Home Rule Act and the application of it, you simply can't have an action by the council to change the Home Rule Act in the matter of that statute. It is more active.
Mr. Orange?
Yeah, well, she just answered that, but I just would also ask our general counsel, I mean, what is our position?
At the moment, the council has not taken a position.
But as we said, if the OAG is going to intervene in this and they establish their position, this is legislation that was enacted by the council and actually approved, then I would like to know what is our position as an institution on this particular matter.
Our position at this point, if we have a position, is that if we're going to get involved, it would be if the case goes up to the Court of Appeals.
Mr. Chairman.
Correct.
At this point, that's
Yes.
what I'm asking for. I think that we should internally come up with what our position is. And so at least, I think that it would be helpful to the OAG, I would assume. One, are we going to acquiesce in their position, or our position is different?
Just one thought on that. Just so you know, we did clearly express our position in the report that went with the law back in 1998 when we put in the report language that this section of 180-day extension only does not apply to the Board of Elections appointments. So this judge, I think it's Judge Ross, but I'm not sure if I remember his name right, completely has it wrong in this scenario. On that ruling. So I would think you could intervene and see if you can intervene and help the Board of Elections, but this is not a situation where the council was unclear.
Well, it'd still just be good from my vantage point to have our general counsel, if that's the case, state what our legislative intent was at that point and go.
Well, there'll be an opportunity on the Court of Appeals. If it goes to the appeals court, they'll have an opportunity to weigh.
Well, I'm not talking about the Court of Appeals. I'm talking about the Council of the District of Columbia as an institution. And have our general counsel weigh in and let us know what our position is.
Just procedurally, I think the questions raised by Councilmembers Orange and Grasso are valid, and I think there are a number of other related questions about Judge Ross's decision. My question to you, Mr. Attorney General, is whether or not Judge Ross has reduced his opinion, which he issued. No. It's my understanding, ruled from the bench, whether or not he's put it in writing yet.
No, he just ruled orally from the bench, has not put it in writing. I would add, of course, that Justice Grasso, I think, has it right on the law. And I would further add that, most importantly, we've reached out to your general counsel and certainly have, I think, the exact same view of the law. Additionally, we've also reached out to Appleseed. They're ready to support us as well.
If there's nothing else on that, Madam Mayor, I think we're through the agenda.
That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank council members.
Oh, I forgot. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Is that a question? No, we don't
What I did
We shared this with Mr. McDuffie's office yesterday, and by the way, we are supportive of the view that the Board of Elections is properly constituted according to the charter, and we have presented to the council, or will present to the council, our nominee to chair the board. There was recently a appointment that the council ruled on, I believe, in your last meeting, and we continue to recruit the non-Democrat member for the board. So we expect that will happen in the weeks.
Yeah, the resolution just came down.
Yes, just came down. So we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.